So, welcome to Unit 4, Managing Quality. These are the different outcomes from this unit. We will be first defining quality and describe how it helps in the corporate strategy and profitability. We will be discussing about the levels of quality standards, the different awards, and the institutions promoting quality standards. After that, I will introduce you to the different costs of quality, and we'll be discussing a little bit on the total quality management and the lean philosophy of continuous improvement. We will also be describing the concepts of an effective total quality management program. So, in today's video, I will be considering only the first five outcomes from this. The next three outcomes, 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8, will be discussed in the next week's lecture. So this is a very important chapter for your midterm. We are covering various aspects in this particular thing. To start with, the different views of quality, it's always important to understand how we are going to consider quality. So whenever I say that, let's say the mobile phone, the iPhone which I'm having is of good quality, what do I mean by that? Does it mean that this is the best of its kind? Or how should I define quality? The most important thing to understand quality is it is based on the perception of the customer. So it is user based. So some customers feel that if a product or a service gives better performance or if it has more features, we call it as a quality product. So in the case of manufacturing industry, think of a certain item. Let's say think of this particular bolt as an example. So how do I say whether this is of the right quality? For doing that, I have to make sure that it is conforming to certain standards. So in the case of this bolt, the standards are referring to the number of threads involved in it, the diameter of this face, and so on. So that's based on the manufacturing perception. Sometimes it is defined in terms of the attributes present in an item. So the most important thing to understand is there is no single definition for quality. So we can define quality as follows. It is the totality of features and characteristics of a product or service that bears on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. So, what it means is as follows. If a product is supposed to give some result, so for instance, when I purchase a mobile phone, I may have certain expectations from my mind. If the mobile phone is able to satisfy all the needs of the customer who purchases it, I can say that the product is a high quality product. So, and it's again based on the perception of the customer. Sometimes a customer feels that the product is not of a good quality because the expectation which he or she is having is far more than what the product is offering, and they say that the product is inferior. But if your expectation is not so high about a product, and if it matches to all the expectations that you have, then you can call it as a high quality product. So the next point is, why is quality very important? So the reason is the company's reputation. So for example, this is the definition, and a company's reputation of providing a product, if a company is not able to provide the items of desired quality, then it won't be able to sustain in the market. So in the last week we discussed about the new product development. So if a new product that you create is not having the expected quality, then the chances are high that the customers will not be purchasing from you. So it can affect the reputation of the company in a good way or in a bad way. So certain companies are famous for creating good quality products. So when you try to go to Walmart and if you try to purchase an item, you have an expectation that the item is of good quality. So if things are not working in the way they are supposed to work, it can have a bad reputation on the company. So the flow of activities necessary to achieve the total quality management. So what we mean to say, so at this point in time, we have been discussing about the quality with respect to a product. So the and the way in which, for example, if an item which we purchase from Dollarama or an item, let's say an automobile, let's say like a Tesla. So the way in which a customer is perceiving quality is different, but because from Dollarama you might be spending say less than $4 for an item that you're purchasing. So expectation from you is different than when you spend say $20,000 on a car that you buy from say Tesla. So the expectation is going to be different, 20,000 or $60,000 that you spent on purchasing a Tesla car. The expectation will be different. So, and the way in which the items, the products are being developed is based on the organizational principles, the mission statement, the vision statement, and it finally leads to the customer satisfaction. So, what it means here is be it an item from Dollarama or an item from Tesla, there is a quality involved in the manufacturing process, quality involved in that particular product. And it is derived from the organizational high level mission and vision statements. And if the quality is not met, the customers will not be happy about the product. Now, if you are able, so how can quality improve the profitability? So, if an item is having good quality, the reputation of that particular product will be, say, mobile phone, will be really high. So, in that particular case, the sales will be very, very high because more people like to buy quality products. As a result, the revenue will be higher. This is one of the ways. The second way in which quality can help in a manufacturing process is, let's assume that the process by which, so this is the location wherein I want to define what we have been discussing about our operations management philosophy: input, output, and operations. The input, this is the output, and this is our operations management. So assume that the process by which you convert your inputs to output is really efficient. What it means is the wastage which is happening in the process of converting input to output is minimal. That means your process is very efficient and effective. That means you're not wasting your money on material. So the raw materials, whatever you get, you are able to fully utilize that and convert it to outputs. So due to the good quality process, so there are two different attributes here. If the product's quality is really good, sales is increasing because the product's quality is very well established, and due to the good reputation of the product, the more people will come and purchase that particular item. And if the product, the process quality is very good, that means when you try to convert an input to the output, you can more efficiently convert our inputs to the output. That means it can help in decreasing the cost. So in both ways, you can increase the profit because profit is revenue minus expenses. So if either the revenue can increase or the expenses can reduce, both can lead to an increase in the profit. So that's how quality helps. So it helps in both the things, increasing sales as well as in reducing the cost. Please understand this very well. Now, how is quality related to the strategy? So, for instance, the three different strategies which you have discussed already, and you already worked on your industry research assignment, we know that there are three strategies which are the differentiation, low cost, and response strategies. So, in each stage, so be it, so for example, in the case of differentiation, I was referring to the example of Apple. So, the way in which the products of Apples are set up is so people believe that the product is of high quality because they are paying high cost rate. That doesn't mean that the product that you buy from a low cost leader like say Dollar Tree or Dollarama is of a bad quality. They are also of good qualities because the philosophy in which this quality, so as I said, quality is more like a how the customer perceives that particular product as. So it helps, it supports all the strategies in which organizations can work, and quality helps firms increase sales and reduce the cost, which we have seen. And building a quality organization is something very important. So in the first section of this 4.1, we have been speaking more about the quality of a product. So what it says is we are not speaking about the quality of an organization, but we were speaking about specifically about the quality of products because in the previous chapter, say chapter 3, we were discussing how a new product could be developed. So this is a continuation of that chapter and we were focusing on the quality of the product. Now, the next thing is you might have heard of some of these things: ISO 9000 or ISO 14000. So ISO 9000 is a standard which is not specifically for a product. What we say that the company is, so it is for a company, that ISO standard is given for a company or for one particular unit of a factory. It is not given for a product. It's ISO certified. When we say, it's mostly like, for instance, we are referring to a company that manufactures that particular product, and that particular company is ISO 9000 certified, or ISO 14000 is specifically referring to the environmental management. So when you try to say such standards, what you mean is that the different processes in the company are so well documented and the quality of the organization is very good that you can, there's a standard which describes certain things, and this organization is working as per that standard. So these ISO standards are specifically referring to a company. It is not specifying the product. So the product which is coming out of that company is definitely gonna be high quality. So a high quality product can come from a not so high quality company, but a high quality company will anyway give a high quality product. So this is something which we need to understand. So the first section was about the product. Now we are entering more into the quality of organizations. Now the third thing is called as, which is very interesting, we normally measure or call, this is a very important thing. So assume that I want to introduce a quality process inside my company. Now there are certain things I have to encounter. For example, let's say that I'm manufacturing the mobile phones in my company. Now the first thing is, if I want to check whether there is any defective piece that I'm manufacturing. So there should be a person who is to be, let's say, a person or a team which is responsible for monitoring the quality of this particular product, which is called as a preventive cost. So the prevention cost is reducing the potential for defects. So what it means is this is the cost which is associated with employing the people for doing this particular quality checking. So if there is no quality in my no quality system in my organization, there is no need for having a quality checking, and the product is just made and given to the market. But the chances are high that the product will not sustain for long in the market. So there is a need for a quality checking process. The second is called as an appraisal cost. What it means is it is the cost associated with the testing equipments, with providing, for example, you need to have human beings as well as you need to have testing equipments, the necessary calibration being done on the equipments, and for evaluating this particular thing, which is referred to as the appraisal cost. So this is an additional cost because if I want to have quality testing in my organization, I need to have human beings, I need to have the equipments. The third and the fourth thing is called as the external cost is what? Assume that I send out a bad item in the market, and then what can happen is that the product is not performing well. So the customer complaints are coming. So I have to replace this particular product, which is called as an external cost because I sent out the product in the market and the product is not performing well. So it's a customer complaint and mitigation is what is called as an external cost. And internal failure typically refers to, for example, let me just try to draw a picture here, then you will understand the various steps. Maybe I can use this side. Let's try to say this is your operations and this is your output stage. At the output stage, I am planning to put a quality manager in my company, and from here it goes to my customer. So the quality person is standing, so the customer is here. So the quality manager is standing in between the finished product and the customer. Now let's try to understand what is the meaning of prevention cost. So the first thing is I have this person who is measuring this quality, is checking whether the item is of the right standards, whether the things are good or bad. So I need to pay salary to this person. I need to give necessary training to this person. So it need not necessarily be a single person. It can even be a team which is involved in the quality measurement. So that's referred to as your prevention cost. The second is appraisal cost. What it means is it's not just a person, but we need to have, say, machineries involved in M. So these are the machineries which are used. It can be telescope, it can be certain, what can I say, screw gauges which is used to measure. It can be vernier caliper, it can be different specific equipment which you might be using for testing whether the item is of the right quality. So which is called as an appraisal cost. So what it means is if these two things are not there, so assume if I don't have these two items in my thing, so I may not be spending my money on these things. So currently I need to introduce, if these two items are not involved in my process, I won't be spending on it. The internal failure refers to, for example, an item which is coming here, and if the quality manager finds that the material is having a defect, he is preventing that material to reach the final customer. So if there is a defective piece, if there is a defective piece, the defective piece is sent back to the process here and then converted, the repaired, and made necessary modifications. So if there is a defective piece here, if there is a defective piece which he has found out, and that defective piece is being sent back to the system to make necessary modifications. So in that way, the quality manager has prevented that defective piece from reaching the final customer. So there is a cost for repairing that particular thing, which is referred to as an internal cost or an internal failure cost. Now the final thing is called as okay. So even though we introduce our quality manager, quality machineries, and also is trying to stop all the defects, there is a certain percentage of it which will definitely reach the customer, which can lead to customer complaints. So the external cost mentioned here is referring to the customer complaints. So it is referring to the customer complaints. So based on this, there is a certain money which the company has to spend to make sure this is the customer complaints. Okay. Now, with this point, let's see what is shown in the next slide. So, at the beginning of your quality improvement journey, you might be spending a lot of things on your external failure and internal failure. But as time progresses, as you go in this side of your journey, the total cost which you're spending is going to be far lesser than what you were spending earlier. So what it means, it actually shows the maturity of your quality journey. So the next thing is the different leaders who have come up with these quality philosophies. So these are some of the names which, if you are trying to read quality management textbooks, the most common name which you see is that of Deming and Juran. So some of these things which we study in this course are actually developed by these leaders in quality. Now, now we are entering into a different domain, which is called as the total quality management. As I was telling in the beginning, the first focus of this course was on the quality of the product. Now, this is not focusing on the product alone. This is focusing on the full organization. So the basic difference between the first part and this is here we are focusing on the entire organization and not on just one product. So the focus is from the supplier who gives you the raw materials, the entire process inside your factory, and then converting that factory and then supplying that particular finished product to your customer. You try to achieve the best in each stage of your organization. So it stresses a commitment. So a total quality management has to come from the top level, and there is need for a commitment by the management to create a continuing company-wide excellence in all aspects of the products and all aspects. So the keywords here are all aspects of the products and services that are important to the customer. So let's think of an example here. So if Conestoga College, if you consider Conestoga College just as an example of a place where you can get education, then the focus will just be on say, exams and test papers and things like that. But when you go to Conestoga College, they don't create just the education. They try to improve on every aspect of the business. Say, for example, the from the moment you enter into the welcome center, you get greeted by the staff. You are being given an experience of feeling great because though welcome center is not really the most important thing, but that's one of the first places wherein the students encounter or get in touch with the college. So welcome center, then you walk around, you have your food services located in different parts of the campus. So food services is another area wherein though it doesn't appear like a key aspect of it, but unless you have a good quality food services within the campus, the education experience may not be very effective. So if I want to introduce TQM, it is the focus has to be on the entire organization, and there has to be a continuing drive towards excellence in all the areas of services and products which are important to the customer. So the second thing which we will be describing here is called as the lean philosophy. The word lean, typically it's not there in your textbook. So the word lean typically refers to removing waste from the items. So for example, it is an organizational philosophy that embraces the concept of continuously improving the things to meet the customer. So what it focuses on here, the key thing of lean is the continual elimination of waste in all the processes and services by first identifying the non-value added activities and only using the minimal amount of resources required to complete a process. So let me explain the lean philosophy. TQM, the total quality management, which we saw here, is a philosophy to ensure that each part of the organization is working at its best so that it can provide best services to the customer. Now, the lean philosophy is, so think of the example of, so I always like to give the example of, say, Tim Hortons. Now, in Tim Hortons, let's say how it works is there is a counter, and whenever you go there, you stand in the queue before reaching the counter and then placing the order for your food. But think of this. So you entered a place, if assume that there are 5 or 6 people standing in front of you and there is a single counter at which you can go, you're wasting your time. So if I'm looking at this particular process from a lean philosophy, how will I improve satisfaction to my customer? One of the ways of doing this is adding more counters. So instead of a single counter, I'll be having say 3 or 4 counters so that I can reduce the waiting time of the customer. So what it says, so this is the lean philosophy, this is the lean thinking process. So in this process, the focus is on eliminating. So and all the things are basically continuous improvement. What continuous improvement means is, so assume that in this example, I am seeing that on an average, customers are waiting for say 5 minutes. So my first focus would be to reduce my waiting time from say 5 minutes to 3 minutes. But even when I reach 3 minutes, I will not be happy. So my first step in my development journey would be to reduce the waiting time from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. So the next stage would be to reduce it from 3 minutes to say 2 minutes, and so on. It becomes a continuous journey. And always the focus is on identify the waste, remove all non-value added activity. Non-value added best example is waiting in a queue and by using the minimal resources to provide. Now, it's also not there in the textbook. So if you want to incorporate lean philosophy, so it requires an organization to follow a mindset to make continuous improvement, to make improvement to all the processes. Only when such a thinking comes in, that's when the lean philosophies work. It is introduced by Toyota, has been well applied in many manufacturing organizations. So think of an organization, you try to look at the process of from input to the output, look at the different stages of the process. If you are able to find out places wherein there is unnecessary waiting or non-value added activities are happening, you need to try to remove those activities. Removing those activities helps the item, helps the customer being happy because the products are available to the customer at a faster pace. So the lean philosophy's best example is to remember the Tim Hortons example wherein you are standing in a line. Now, in lean philosophies thing, there are the first thing is again, we are not studying these aspects here. We are discussing some of these tools subsequently, but lean philosophy basically works with some of these things called as value stream mapping, Six Sigma methodology, and root cause analysis. These are some of the improvement tools which follows the lean philosophy, which we will be studying subsequently in the next week. But in this week, we just need to remember what is total quality management and what is the meaning of lean philosophy. Now, there are seven different concepts in total quality management, starting with the first concept we already discussed, which is called as the continuous improvement. The next is the Six Sigma, employee empowerment, benchmarking, just in time, Taguchi concepts, and knowledge of TQM tools. We are discussing a little bit of some of these techniques in this course. To start with, the continuous improvement philosophy, what it means is, so this is what I was saying. Let's say that I want to reduce the waiting time. So if it is a continuous, so waiting time reduction is my focus. If I want to reduce the waiting time in Tim Hortons, waiting time reduction. So I don't get satisfied just by reducing the waiting time from say 5 minutes to 3 minutes. I keep on continuously working on this process so that I keep on improving on this. So it represents the continuous improvement of all the processes. And in this thing, it is not just one part of it. So, for example, in Tim Hortons, we will try to understand why there is delay. It is possible that the delay could be due to, say, the person standing in the counter. Maybe he is not having the necessary training and he is given the necessary training for increasing the efficiency. Or it could be the equipment. For example, the machine which is used for tapping is not working. For example, the order taking machine or is not working efficiently, or even the procedure for doing this is not effective. So the continuous improvement tries to look at the holistic view of the operations and try to improve upon that. Now, there is a Japanese term for continuous improvement, Kaizen. So Kaizen stands for continuous improvement. So if you have a question of what is Kaizen, Kaizen stands for continuous improvement. The next thing is called as a Six Sigma methodology, which we are not studying much in this course. It is a statistical method. So for this course, what you need to understand is Six Sigma is a statistical method of analyzing the data, finding out the root causes and improving the things. So in Six Sigma, we use something called as a DMAIC method, which is a method of improving the processes using Six Sigma methodology. So DMAIC stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So I know that this can be look a bit theoretical at this stage, but I am a Six Sigma black belt wherein I have worked with multiple organizations to identify how they can improve their quality by following this philosophy. So DMAC is a very, very powerful methodology which is normally used in many organizations for achieving operational excellence. The next step is called as an employee empowerment. I can give an example here. So let's say that you go to a Tim Hortons and you are purchasing a cup of coffee. And when you purchase this particular cup of coffee, you just grabbed it and somehow you dropped it by mistake because it was too hot or whatever. It just fell from your hand. There are multiple ways in which things, so it has become a really a messy situation. So assume that the person standing in the counter suddenly comes to you and says, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it. It's quite okay. I can give another cup of coffee." So, and then he or she gives another cup of coffee and gives you to you. At the same time, another person comes and cleans that particular place. so that it becomes safe to move, it becomes cleaner, safer to move. At the same time, you are also happy that the person just give that, he didn't charge you additional money or anything, just gives you another cup of coffee. This experience which you had was so good that you feel again, you feel great going back to that Tim Hortons again. Now let's think of another example. You drop the cup of coffee, the person standing on the counter gets really like started to show the faces at you, and you get like a bit uncomfortable at that particular stage, and immediately he calls his manager. So what should I do at this stage? Think of that sort of an experience. You just dropped a $2 worth of coffee, but the feeling which you are going through is so high that you may feel so uncomfortable at that particular stage. So employee empowerment basically means if the employee has been given the necessary training, the necessary way of acting on this particular situation, it's an improvement. The customer becomes so loyal in the first case, but in the second case, the customer may not feel like going to that Tim Hortons again. So you need to, if you want to create such sort of an empowerment, you need to build proper communication with your employees, create an open and supportive supervisors, give more responsibility to the employees. If something goes wrong, please take care of it and create a high morale organization. These are the aspects which are called as the employee empowerment. Now, there are other things called as quality circles. Now, quality circle is wherein, for example, if the organization, so we are discussing how the different aspects could be incorporated in an organization to achieve total quality management. So the first best example is an employee empowerment. We also discussed about continuous improvement philosophy. We spoke a little bit on Six Sigma methodology here. And the next thing is called as a quality circle. What quality circle means is, let's say there are 50 employees in your organization. Let's say you divide them into 10 groups, and each group is given a target to continuously find out methods and improve that particular thing. It's another commonly employed method in manufacturing sector. So the group of employees, they meet regularly to solve the problems. So you give them some necessary training. There may be a facilitator in each team. It's very effective if it is done properly. Now, there are two more methods which we are going to study here. The next is called as a PDCA approach, which is another thing called as plan, do, check, act. So PDCA is always written like this: P, D, C, and A. So what it means is you start with a planning. So initial planning is to reduce the waiting time from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. So you do some activities. Your action is you add a two counters to reduce the waiting time. Now you check whether things are working good or not. If things are working good, it's nice. If things are not working good, take actions and improve upon your planning. And it is a continuous cycle. It's not a single thing. It is a continuous cycle called as the PDCA approach. And the last thing which I am going to discuss now is called as a benchmarking method. So in benchmarking, I'm not going to discuss everything here. So in benchmarking method, what we will be doing is we will be comparing our performance with the performance of an industry leader and then trying to see how we are performing. So this is another approach to achieve excellence in operations. For example, the number of students who pass out from Conestoga College, let's say, is say 5,000 students each year. And if I try to compare Conestoga College with another college, Durham College, let's say that 8,000 students are passing out each year. So I can try to find out, I can try to benchmark my performance with the industry leader or the standard performance, and then try to improve upon the things. So there are good examples. If you think of, you watch Ferrari race, So you might see how Ferrari racing team, how much time they take for changing the wheels. It just takes a split second. We'll be seeing this particular thing in our, let's say, class on Thursday. But the benchmarking is always done to compare how you are performing with respect to a standard. Now, benchmarking can be of two types of benchmarking. One is called as within the industry. For example, you are in education industry. So if Conestoga College is comparing its performance with Durham College, it's called as a strategic benchmarking or a competitive benchmarking. But if you're trying to compare the processes, it's not just the same industry. Different industries can be there, but if you're trying to compare it with different industries, it's called as a process benchmarking. So process benchmarking is a comparison with the world class, whereas same industry benchmarking is called as the competitive or strategic benchmarking. So one of the examples is if you go to emergency room in, so let's say that we are trying to compare the the hospital wait times in the Waterloo region. So what is the best hospital to go in this region, hospital emergency room to go in this region? So is it Grand River or is it St. Mary's? So if you're trying to compare that, that sort of a comparison is called as a competitive comparison. In the same industry, you are trying to compare how you are performing. So if you read here, other firms in the same industry is the competitive or strategic comparison. So some questions are given here. So if you're trying to compare your grade in OPER 1160 to your classmate, this is also competitive because you are comparing the same set of students in the same course. That is considered to be your comparison with in the same industry, in the same class, same course. But if you're trying to make a comparison with the students in engineering, you're trying to look for how the best in that particular thing is working with respect to you. Now, Canadian Tire is comparing with their supply chain with Dell Computers. It is a, say, Dell Computer is a different industry compared to Canadian Tires. So that comparison is a process level comparison, benchmarking. But Home Hardware Warehouse comparing their pick rates with Canadian Tire Warehouse. So it's similar. Home Hardware and Canadian Tire is similar. So in that particular case, it is the same industry you are comparing is strategic or competitive benchmarking, and the comparison which you are having with respect to the comparison which you're having with respect to the best in the class is called as the process benchmarking. Now, the very last thing in this is the just in time philosophy. So just in time basically means you don't hold any inventory. You try to cut down on the cost of the quality and you improve the quality basically. So what it means is you will have lesser inventory as and when you need to, say, let's say that you are a car manufacturing company, you will not be holding inventory of tires and steel and so on. The material arrives at your place as per the need of your production. So just in time means the inventory holding cost. We'll be studying about the inventory holding in the next, like in the I think week 9 or week 10 of your course. But higher inventory always means higher cost for the organization. So a just in time is one of the methods to reduce the inventory systems. Now, what is shown here. So normally your work in progress or the inventory level, higher inventory levels are generally due to unreliable vendors and having so much of wastage happening. So I was saying how quality can reduce the cost. So if you try to think that if your process is not efficient enough or it creates lots of scrap. That means you need to have lots of inventory in your organization. So just in time is one of the methods which helps to avoid the inventory and improve the effectiveness of the organization. So reducing the inventory levels so helps to reveals problems so they can be solved. So if you have lots of inventory, certain things like unreliable vendors and scrap may not be so obvious to you, but when you try to reduce the inventory levels in your organization, it is easy for you to understand how things are working in the organization. So with this, I will be stopping the lecture for today. So I just want to quickly go through the things which you have seen. We started with the introduction to the quality of the product. Then we went inside the different ISO philosophies which are possible. We also discussed on the concept of total quality management. This chapter can be a bit complicated for some students, but I strongly recommend that you understand the concepts. So the total quality management is a philosophy throughout the organization. And we discussed about the lean philosophy. The lean is a process wherein the wastage time has to be reduced. I took the example of the waiting time at Tim Hortons. Then we also discussed about the different concepts in TQM. So continuous improvement, there is a word which we studied called as the Kaizen. So it means we continuously improve. So think of reducing the time wastage in a waiting time in a Tim Hortons. If you try to continuously improve upon this, which is called as continuous improvement philosophy, we discussed a little bit on the Six Sigma methods. The DMAIC is the only thing which you need to remember here. It is a statistical technique which is very commonly used in industry, which we are not studying here. The third is the employee empowerment. I gave the example of the case wherein you purchase a coffee and in case you drop that particular coffee, if the employee is given the empowerment, you will feel so much loyal to that organization, to that particular important store. And we spoke a little bit on the quality circles and about the PDCA model. PDCA is the plan, do, check, and act model. And towards the end, we discussed about the benchmarking processes. Benchmarking is trying to compare your performance with the best in the industry or with the best in terms of the processes. So the two types of benchmarking which we have seen is that of the competitive and or strategic benchmarking and the process benchmarking. We took some examples, and the last thing is called as a just-in-time inventory. It is a method of significantly reducing your inventory levels. So if you are able to reduce inventory levels to a great extent, then the process will be very, very effective. So that's all about your just-in-time as well. So with this, I'm finishing the lecture for today. See you all on Thursday.